Hello everybody, I'm Joyanne Haigh. We welcome our viewers and listeners in Barbados and around the world to Face It and Fix It on CBC TV 8, CBC Barbados Facebook and YouTube, and of course Q 100.7 FM radio. I hope you guys had a fantastic weekend. I did. My mom celebrated her 80th birthday, and she's still with us, and I'm very grateful for that. Today we are going to have a great show, as always, and because we are celebrating Coastal Zone Month, we are going to be joined by the Department of Emergency Management, DEM, the Coastal Zone Management Unit, CZMU, and the Caribbean Tsunami Information Center. And joining us with that, from those organizations will be KERRY HINDS, Director of DEM, also the Director from CZMU, Dr. Leo BREWSTER, and Program Officer for Coastal Hazards at the CTIC, Miss ALISON BROME. And just don't forget, and just in case you missed the intro, as we celebrate Coastal Zone Hazards this month, we will be talking about all of the natural disasters and what we have to look for and what the DEM and all these organizations and how they work together. And we look forward to hearing from you and your questions on those issues. Well, today is World Down Syndrome Day, and we are rocking our socks. As you all know, my daughter has Down syndrome, and I talk about her a lot. So today we celebrate Down syndrome, and I'm proud I'm rocking my socks as I was getting ready this morning in the makeup chair. And we will be joined today by Dr. MEDFORD to discuss some of the medical checks that persons with Down syndrome should get, especially as they reach the adolescent age. And your parents, if you're out there, if you are a mother, father, cousin, if you have a friend and you know, okay, this person, child has Down syndrome, you might want to tell them to tune in today. You can answer some of your concerns, some of the questions that you really bother you from day to day. Is it a death sentence? Some people ask me if they were pregnant and they found out the child had Down syndrome, what to do. Well, that was an easy answer for me, bring the child. It's not a death sentence, but of course everybody has to make their own choice. So I hope you tune in today, and I hope you're rocking your socks right through Barbados. I think we also have some people who sent us they're rocking their socks, I should say. These are nurses in Dr. Bandry's office in Belleville rather, and I hope, yes, there are the nurses in Dr. Bandry's office, Nurse Tina, Nurse, I can't remember all of the names, but they sent us these pictures in the pink and striped socks, as you can see them there on the screen. So thank you so much, nurses and office staff from Dr. Bandry's office, for sharing those lovely pics with us. We want to hear from you today. Call us on 228-5563 or 228-5562, or you can send us a WhatsApp message on 228-5562. If you want to watch us on social media, type in CBC Barbados on Facebook and you can leave your comments there. When we come back, we will be speaking with members from the coastal zone and basically all of the emergency departments and those that will help us navigate storms, tsunamis, earthquakes, etc. Interesting show. Stay with us when we come back. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. This morning we are joined by Dr. Leo Brewster, Director, Coastal Zone Management Unit. We have KERRY HINDS, Director, Department of Emergency Management, DEM. ALISON BROME, Program Officer for Coastal Hazards, Caribbean Tsunami Information Center, CTIC. And Dr. Leo Brewster will be joining us shortly. But for now, we will be speaking with KERRY HINDS and ALISON BROME. We welcome you to Face It and Fix It. Good morning, ladies.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, I want to ask you about, well, let's go to KERRY HINDS. KERRY, your name is a very common name in Barbados, now familiar with everybody, but normally not around this time of the year. We normally hear you around hurricane season, so when we actually getting a storm or threats of one, and I'm glad that you're here today outside of hurricane season. So tell us a little bit, a little overview about the DEM and how the departments work with each other. I know we might have mentioned that before, but for our viewers and listeners who tuning in for the first time, can you share that with us?
Thanks and good morning. Thank you for having me today on the episode. The Department of Emergency Management is the organization responsible for the National Disaster Risk Management Program, ensuring that we have a coordinating mechanism for any national emergencies that may occur. Now, we coordinate various ministries and agencies, governmental, private sector, civil society, under an emergency management umbrella, because the Department of Emergency Management cannot do it alone. We harness the various resources, whether human, technical, financial, of the various agencies to manage an emergency if it happens. Now we have we not only look at the hurricane hazard that may affect the island, but we look at various hazards. So our focus is a multi-hazard focus. We look at various natural as well as man-made hazards that may cause an emergency or disaster. So we look to manage that. So I'm coming to you outside of the hurricane season. I know traditionally one of our major hazards are the storms and the hurricanes. But this month we are looking at coastal hazards and earthquakes. And this has been part of our program for a number of years now, where we look to educate persons about the tsunami and other coastal hazards and earthquakes, what they should do if these hazards may occur, what are the actions that they need to take, and how they can prepare themselves to manage these hazards.
My attention now to ALISON BROME, the Program Officer for Coastal Hazards, Caribbean Tsunami Information Center, the CTIC. ALISON, we are hearing the word tsunami so often these days for the last couple of years, and more so recently, I find. Give us an overview of the organization, because I know we hear there's sirens sometimes. They say that people hear in other countries and so on and so forth, and then they know that it's a tsunami. So just give us an overview first of your organization.
Thank you, Joyanne, and thanks to the team. Of course, the team of the Technical Standing Committee on Coastal Hazards for Barbados, headed by the Coastal Zone Management Unit, as well as the DEM and their directors. So we are pleased this morning to be here. The Caribbean Tsunami Information Center is really a partnership organization between UNESCO IOC and the government of Barbados. And I will just give you a bit about UNESCO IOC. So we might hear UNESCO in terms of its educational component. Mainly we would have heard a lot about the cultural component as well, especially since we were recognized, Bridgetown, as part of the cultural heritage site, a World Heritage Site. But UNESCO also has a scientific arm. So it's the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization. And within the scientific sector, we have the Intergovernmental Oceanographic Commission, or the IOC. Within the IOC, so there it's very linked and very wide in the expanse in terms of the linkages that we will speak to later relating to tsunamis. But within the IOC, we have a tsunami unit, and this unit is responsible for coordinating tsunami internationally. So we have 4 regional early warning systems for tsunamis, and the Caribbean and adjacent regions is but one. We also have in the Pacific, as well as the northeastern Mediterranean and Atlantic, as well as the Indian Ocean. So within our Caribbean early warning system, one of the key organizations would be a Tsunami Information Center. And the Caribbean Tsunami Information Center is that entity that is poised with serving all member states of the Caribbean and early and adjacent regions. There are 48 member states, of which Barbados is one. And we support the member states in developing their early warning mechanisms in terms of protocols and standard operating procedures should there be an impact or an event that is likely to cause a tsunami. We also support them in public awareness and education, and as well as developing their monitoring systems in terms of equipment, mechanisms, and so on. And there's a high level of data sharing among not only in the Caribbean, but internationally through the IOC tsunami mechanism. And I would just also hasten to say, as we are celebrating coastal hazards and earthquake smart month, that we support our member states as well in exercising, practicing. So we would have just had our Caribbean wave exercise. The Department of Emergency Management here would have carried out their testing, and we would have seen that publicized very heavily on the 10th of March. And this is a region-wide exercise coordinated through our regional early warning system supported by the Caribbean Tsunami Information Center. And our center is specific in that we also address other coastal hazards. In the 3 other international systems, they focus on tsunami, Caribbean and adjacent regions. We focus on tsunamis and other coastal hazards. So we do have that multi-hazard focus, and of course, much of that will come out, we expect, in our discussions this morning and our interaction, hopefully, with the public as we get to a question and answer.
Okay, thank you so much. Good morning, Dr. Leo Brewster. Thank you for joining us. Can you give us, good morning, you're the Director of Coastal Zone Management Unit. And can you just give us a little overview of the organization?
Okay, so the Coastal Zone Management Unit is an agency within government. It is responsible for the ongoing management of the shoreline generally, where it looks at not only monitoring for beach erosion, shoreline stability, but more importantly, it also considers things like coastal ecosystem health, especially coral reefs. We do a little bit of work also as it speaks to water quality around the reef ecosystems specifically. And we also deal with all the town planning applications that fall to the coastline from the Town and Country Planning Office. As people will be very much aware, we also do significant work when it comes to shoreline stabilization and enhancement, where we have done the work such as the HINDS boardwalk, the coastal accessways along the west coast of the island, the Welch's open window just outside Oystons, the Rockley breakwater, and the Paynes Bay cliff revetment, and the breakwaters at Weston, etc. So we are very dynamic in our work and the approach to the work that we do.
Okay, thank you. Alison, question, what is the Tsunami Recognition Program?
Thank you. The Tsunami Recognition Program, and we call it the Tsunami Ready Recognition Program for short. I spoke about the Caribbean wave, but through the Tsunami Ready program, we really provide countries with a very comprehensive framework within which to develop their own local system And this spans all four elements of the early warning system I would refer to previously in terms of monitoring and detection, the hazard assessment, the public awareness and education, as well as the protocols, warning, communication. And the program was adapted from a US-based program, the US Tsunami Ready program, and piloted in the Caribbean from 2011. Somewhere around 2018, 2019, the benefits of the program were very much at its height, and the IOC, under their assembly, made a decision to actually expand the Tsunami Ready program from the region to the international lanes. And therefore, all four early warning systems, as I pointed out, is now implementing the Tsunami Ready program. So I think in the Caribbean, one, we have quite a lot to be proud of and to be recognized for, because we actually piloted this and were successfully able to show that its benefits and efficiencies. So our program is a key part of the UN Decade for Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, which is being led by UNESCO IOC, and this decade will be celebrated over 2021 to 2030. And one of the key roles or goals of this decade is really to have each community that is vulnerable to tsunamis be enhanced, prepared for through the Tsunami Ready program and other initiatives. The program is really also implemented. It can be implemented at the national level or community level. And in Barbados, we would have recognized the community of Shermans, the Mullins in 2020. And this, as I said, was very exciting. It actually drills down to what we call the last mile, the end of the early warning system. So therefore, the general man on the street has the opportunity to be seized with the relevant information, whether it is through the hazard map so that they know where is likely to be flooded should there be a tsunami, to the evacuation route, the signage. I'm sure many of you traversing Highway 1 from Mullins to Sherman's would see the signage that advises you if you are in the hazard zone and also where to go should there be a tsunami, and of course the assembly point. And that's very critical, as you know. We've also been able to implement through the national and community stakeholders a mechanism whereby the message, when a tsunami message comes from, should it come from the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, who is our regional provider in the Caribbean, it can be channeled through the national agencies and right down to the last person in the community between Sherman's and Mullins. Of course, this happens on various levels throughout the country, but in our pilot communities, there's a high measure of signage, of equipment, of the specific protocols that lead to that. And as part of the protocol, communities are required to execute community awareness and education, and of course, test these procedures so that all in the community can be seized with the relevant information.
Okay, so I want to bring it down a little bit to an actual scenario for the public. So a tsunami warning comes, because I'm just trying to make sure I understand how the departments work with each other. There's a tsunami warning. We have these three departments. If you can repeat, who gets the first set of information, and how does it go down through to the protocols and the operating procedures? So a tsunami warning, the earthquake happens somewhere near, that triggers a tsunami warning for Barbados. As soon as that happens, how do these departments actually work together?
Thank you, Joyanne. So I will speak to the regional lines, and I will give and Dr. Brewster the opportunity to really provide that detail level that what happens at the national lines. So as I said, regionally, our Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, which is the US-based center located in Hawaii, that is our designated regional service provider for the Caribbean and adjacent regions. And you recall in my introduction, I spoke about data sharing and I spoke about the wider lens. So it's not when tsunamis, because of the nature of tsunamis, it could be impacting another part of the world, and we can end up being impacted. And I think there's evidence from, as early as 14 can speak to have that reference as to where tsunamis can be local, impacting areas just 100 kilometers or so within range of where it's actually sourced, to actually being ocean or ocean-wide tsunamis, where they impact areas over 1,000 kilometers away from the source. So as long as there is a measure of coastline, there is the potential for some impact, by dependent on how strong and the nature, the characteristics as well. So should a tsunami threat be detected, the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center will issue the relevant message. Initially, and the center, I would hasten to add, is really, and our system is really built towards earthquake source tsunamis. So it's primarily based on earthquake events. And should an event occur over 6 magnitude, the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center will issue what we call a tsunami information statement. By gathering data, including available sea level data and so on, impacted within a few of that earthquake being generated, they are then able to provide the member states in the Caribbean or the Pacific, where they also serve, with the relevant information of the level of threat. And progressively, as more information becomes available through our data sharing networks and the analysis that's available to them, they then consecutively issue various elements of messaging that would help to support the national agencies to make decisions. So some of these go into graphical products where the countries are provided more details as we move along. Obviously, we appreciate the measure of time, but as much as possible, we anticipate and we try to give the member states as much information as possible within a reasonable time.
Thank you so much.
And then
Okay, go. Sorry, we're gonna.
I was just going to say that when that is received by the Tsunami Warning Focal Point, who is the agency that the country has designated to receive that information from the regional agencies, then the national agencies and their protocols and procedures then would take precedent.
Okay, we're gonna take a quick break and then we're gonna talk about it on the national level, what happens right here in Barbados. We'll be back after the break. Back to Face It and Fix It as we celebrate coastal zone hazards this month. We have with us KERRY HINDS from DEM, Dr. Leo BREWSTER from CZMU, and ALISON Broome from CTIC. Now we're bringing it home now to Barbados, and I want to mention 2 weeks ago, I think it was, and you mentioned it earlier that we had a simulation, an exercise. And I saw all of the information going out, and I thought, okay, great, everybody is aware. But then I'm getting my nails done. This is what actually happened. I'm getting my nails done, and this lady shouts out, this is no lying, and she actually works at the QEH. She said, oh gosh, we are on tsunami watch. Warning, she said. So everybody in the salon looked around. And I'm like, no, they're doing a simulation. She said, no, we're in a particular chat at the hospital, and they said it was a natural warning. So we were all confused. And as I said, this was the last time you did it, which I think was like 2 weeks ago. So everybody started to panic a little bit, and certainly we were just all trying to get the information. Was this the simulation, or did we actually have an earthquake? So let's just say, not an earthquake, I might say a tsunami warning. Let's just say that we did have one, a warning. What do we do then locally with the DEM? How do we start the process?
Okay, thanks for the question. Just following on from what Ms. Brome would have indicated at the regional level, our national warning focal point, which is the Barbados Met Service, they will receive the message from the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center. Once they receive that message, they will do some level of analysis, and then they will send out the message, disseminate this message to the emergency services as well as the public. Now, it is very dependent on how much time you have available to you. So hence, in pushing the message out to the first responders and the public, we utilize what we call the CAP.CAT. That is our mass alerting system. And we ask the public to sign up. And we would have had a number of campaigns. It is an ongoing public education campaign asking persons to sign up to CAP.CAT, where you will receive the messages there. And then based on the messages, then you would obviously proceed to action what you see. Now, that is not the only form of communications. We also have our existing emergency telecommunications network, where our first responders will have our radios and our telecommunication equipment, where the message also will be disseminated across that platform, so that all the emergency services are made aware of what is going on. And this, of course, is over a 24-hour period. Once that information is translated, then our various procedures within the various agencies, they will activate, and then they will pass that information down to their persons within their various agencies, so that they can act. They can go to the emergency operations centers. They can go on the ground to assist persons in moving, evacuating to higher ground. Now, all of this is happening while the information is also communicated via the various airwaves and to key persons in the community that will also assist with evacuation. Why we also show persons, teach persons the natural warning signs and that type of thing, because you may not hear the message from the radio or whatever. You may be at the beach, and hence the reason why we teach you the natural warning signs of a tsunami. if you hear a loud roar, or you see the sea receding, so you can see all the fish in all the bottom of the ocean, you know to just move, run, go to higher ground. So once that information is passed from the national warning focal point all the way down to the various services and into the communities, then there are actions that the persons will take to ensure that they get to safety.
Oh,
Now, or so it can be, so we do not limit ourselves to one mode of warning persons. You have, as I said, you have the system, the cap system. You have the emergency telecommunications network. You will have agencies in the community, and you will have persons in the community who will also um, be a part of the warning process. If you have to phone a friend, you will have your emergency plan. You will know, well, you may have to phone a friend to ask them to move, or you need to go to a neighbor to assist in the movement of the person. So we try to use all the various modes available to us.
so let me ask you this before I move on to the danger zones, etc. There's a difference, obviously, between a hurricane, watch, storm watch, warning. For a tsunami, no. There's a watch and a warning, but because the time frame is obviously shorter than that of a hurricane, do you start with a watch and then a warning, or is it just a warning you know for sure? Is it one of these things that we don't know 100%? How does that work with that language?
Okay, once we receive the information from the Pacific Warning Center, that information will indicate if it is a localized tsunami. So within minutes, it may impact us, or you may have a regional tsunami, which 1 to 3 hours it may impact us, and then you have distant tsunamis. We have been affected by such before back in 1700s. So that will take, say, about 9 hours because it has to come over the ocean. So obviously, depending on the time available to you, then that will inform how you respond. So if it is a localized event and you have 10 to 15 minutes, that is why usually we send the information over the cat master. So it's not a case where you look for one set of persons and you tell them and then they go on to somebody else. We just push that information out there as quickly as possible because of the time. Now, if it is, say, the 9 hours, you may have more time, but you still utilize all the available modes of communication to you so you can get that information out there. Persons may have a little bit more time to actually action what they hear. But the important thing is just to make sure that we push that information up there. As you quite rightly said, we may not necessarily have the time like how when we have the warnings or the watches or the bulletins as it relates to the hurricane hazard, where from days out persons are given an inkling of what may or may not happen, particular of the potential threat of the particular hazard at the point in time. But with this tsunami hazard, we just push that information out there because we don't have that amount of lag time with respect to the tsunami hazard.
A question just came in quickly. What wave height, if you could put it back up on the screen that we're looking at, they're asking what wave height are we talking about and how do you know what height the waves will be?
Okay, that's my question.
Yes.
I think the real reality in that sense is it depends on the location and the time, the length of time it's going to take to get here. One thing that is always of concern to most persons is the impending height of the wave coming in. And because of our unique location within the Caribbean island chain, we have a very short shelf. So it means that there's a lot of travel time, and then the waves will actually have a short run up before they actually come onto shore. And then we don't have much distance to travel inland. So it's highly unlikely that we would be expecting a tsunami to be like a 15 or 20-meter sort of wave height coming. That is unlikely to occur. For the most part, we're still thinking that in a worst case scenario, you may get up to maybe a 4 or 5 meter wave, right? Which is like maybe 12 to 15 feet, which in some cases can be as bad as when we have a really bad winter swell storm event or hurricane wave event passing by. The only difference is that with a tsunami wave, it continuously propagates. So it isn't like there's a storm wave that comes in and then it breaks and then you may have a lull and then there are more waves coming in behind it. It is a constant onsurge of water onto land. And that is what people misunderstand when they're thinking of a tsunami. They just think it's just one humongous wave that's going to come in and wipe out everything. That is not the case. It is really and truly the penetration of water through the mobilization of the water onto the shoreline that causes the most damage. So it's the sheer velocity and force of the water as it's moving through across the near shore and onto the land that is the problem. So if you look at the Indonesian tsunami and the tsunami that happened in Japan, where it was extensive damage, that can happen. But the reason why that happened there and it went so far inland was because that land on the coastline is very flat. Okay, so once the land level is flat at the coastline, you will get a very deep penetration inland. In our situation, we have maybe 400 or 500 meters along the west coast, and then you encounter the first cyclone. So that is why the advice to get to higher ground is so essential. So I mean, like if you look at a place like Bats Rock, running all the way up to say Holders Hill, you know very well that the line that runs along what would be West Terrace and Oxnard is running all the way along there into the Husbands area. You can see full well that that area being penetrated has a steep gradation once it comes onto shoreline heading up to that height. So the level of penetration we would not expect to be very high or very far inland. We would normally anticipate that when you get to the 5 to 10 meter contour, the impact of the tsunami wave should be less impactful
Okay.
than further, right?
Well,
So that would be it.
all right. Well, we're going to have to take a quick break, and when we come back, we have some questions from WhatsAppers. They're asking if the reefs offer any protection, but we'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. We're speaking with KERRY HINDS, Director DEM, Dr. Leah BREWSTER, Director Coastal Zone Management Unit, and ALISON BROME, Program Officer for Coastal Hazards Caribbean Tsunami Information Center. So before the break, question came in if the reefs offer any protection during a tsunami.
The reefs can offer some level of protection, especially the offshore bank reefs, which are slightly deeper in terms of attempting to slow down the general power of the wave coming in. But obviously, that is going to vary at locations. The majority of our reefs are found on headlands, and some may be found in patchy locations along the central areas of bays. So they can provide some level of defense, but they're, like I said, because it's not your classic or typical storm wave type of action, their their level of effect is going to be reduced because of the height of the water coming onshore and the sheer velocity of the water coming onshore, um, in that driving progressive manner.
Okay, so we are an island surrounded by water, north, south, east, west. Would we know where the danger zones are before, um, before it actually hits? Would you know which direction? Does it come all around the
Um,
island, or does it just come from one particular part? If it's coming from the north, will it come from the south? Is that something you would know? Like how storms come, you say, okay, it's coming from the south.
yeah, yeah. Generally, what we have been working towards is trying to come up with a standardized modeling regime for tsunamis. Uh, the reality is that everything is always dependent upon where the point of origin is. So therefore, if you had a Kikam Jenny, which is just off Grenada sort of thing, generating storms coming from that direction, that would be different if you had a tsunami coming out of the North Atlantic coming down onto the top of Barbados. What we generally have seen so far is that those that come in from the east and the southeast, or potentially from the east and the southeast, may have some level of a wraparound effect when it comes onto the east coast. The waves would wrap around, but the sheltering of the west coast seems to be more predominant in some areas when the waves are coming from that direction than if they were coming from the north or from a westerly sort of direction onshore. That's the best way to describe it. We do know where some areas of land are low-lying and therefore going to be most prone to storm surge inundation, right?
Well,
Which is something that we already have mapped generally. So the same areas that would coincide with areas that could be prone to storm surge inundation would also be most vulnerable to tsunami
did you
impact.
list any of those areas? Could you share that with us, some of the danger zones?
Well, it isn't really the issue in terms of a tsunami danger zone. I said already depends upon where you are. That's the reason why we're doing the community awareness approaches. But obviously, low-lying areas would be in areas of Old Town, areas of like Oistins, the Maxwell area, some parts of the upper West Coast, especially in the areas of Spice Town as well, which is why we did the Shermans, the Mullins to think it's sort of mapping. Um, Areas of walkers on the east coast of the island, areas of Martins Bay, etc. Those sort of low-lying areas. Because remember, it's the area of direct impact. It doesn't matter if the land slopes up immediately behind it. If the immediate area of shoreline contact is low, then that's the area where the inundation is gonna, right? But they're like generalized areas around the place. Even some parts of Bridgetown may also be impacted because we all recognize that Bridgetown is a very low-lying area. And depending upon the amount of storm surge that comes in, you can have a problem. That has already been exemplified in situations where we had, like when Maria was passing, you could see the storm surge going up into Greenwich. Remember, heading all the way up towards the park. We've also had other instances where parts of Carlisle Bay were flooded all the way back to the position of the old seawall when Ivan passed, and therefore similar things would be expected along that length there as well. So those are the sort of things that you're looking at.
Okay, well, here's the thing for me, though, because we have a lot of emergency services that are coastal. You have the Defense Force, you have a few police stations, fire service, and the Barbados Light and Power, which is out there by the mighty Grainer Highway. That worries me. But I mean, it's there. We can't do anything right now about it. Is there some sort of level of protection with the equipment or things that are recommended in terms of a wall, maybe some sort of sandbags, things like that around? Would they have time to do something like that?
Yeah, well, you always have time. I think that in terms of the utility companies and industry, especially that may be found along the coastline, they have already, for the last 10 to 15 years, been incorporating through their own design and retrofitting and upgrading um, activities on site that will help protect against storm surge and flooding, including tsunami. And we know that especially for Light and Power at Spring Garden, whereby they've actually done some significant elevation of their generators off of the ground. They've also looked to move some of their actual plant facilities up to the north of the island as well. They've also been doing other things along the way to ensure that their seaward boundaries can be protected as best as possible. Uh, other areas that are of similar nature, as you rightly said, there are a lot of public emergency facilities within coastal areas that can be prone to flooding. But in some instances, they also have sufficient time uh, once notice is given that their equipment can be moved out. So vehicles especially can be relocated to other locations should the need arise. I think that you know, generally consideration for relocation of this sort of infrastructure is something that has to happen. But you also have to bear in mind that the locations where they are placed are as a result of the need for that level of um, presence to be able to respond generally in certain areas, right? So you have to weigh the risk against the potential frequency of an event to occur, etc., and then look and see what the better options are.
Someone is asking, has Barbados ever had a tsunami? They can't remember hearing of any. Do we have any history books?
There was a
So I
tsunami
would,
in the. Well, Alison could answer, yeah.
no, you go ahead, Dr. Brewster. You speak.
No,
Thank
no,
you.
you have it better than me. You go. You go.
Okay,
Okay,
I
I
think it
was
was
just
I'll
in
going to,
choose. Allison?
thank you, Joyanne. I was just going to make reference to the 1755 Great Lisbon tsunami, and that's one where we have evidence of an ocean-wide or distant tsunami really impacting the region. And Barbados as well was included in that impact. This would have traveled across from Portugal right over to the Caribbean. Of course, there was, as we were referring early in terms of um, the distance passed, and there was records to indicate that there were wave heights of particular, dependent on the nature, as Dr. Brewster said, but within our region, ranging from a few centimeters to at least a foot and so on. But we are speaking also of today where we have greater advances in our mechanisms and our ability to be able to prepare and warn. And we want to really emphasize that as well. We want to look at the long term in terms of the mitigation element and also in terms of our public awareness and education, because we speak of our system, but our system is nothing without the community actually knowing what to do and individuals actually knowing what to do. And this is really as well part of the focus of the regional early warning system, the Tsunami Ready program, the Caribbean Carib Wave exercise as well. And as we speak to the whole measure of has tsunamis impacted the region, has it impacted the island of Barbados, we want to also share some of the initiatives that we're doing to kind of improve what is already there, ensure that we have our population as knowledgeable and as advanced as we possibly can. So you would appreciate in 1755, there was not much that would have been available to our national authorities and our community leaders, but we have made significant advances. So as part of these, Dr. Brewster did mention some initiatives outside of Sherman's and Mullins. We are at the cusp of launching a new initiative for a new community in Barbados under the Tsunami Ready program. And again, we will be implementing the mapping, the signage, getting the community really involved to understand what tsunamis are about. Yes, we are prone to tsunamis, and what can they do to save themselves and their community. We would also like to focus, as you did, on the other sectors. You mentioned about emergency sectors, but we also have tourism establishments, schools, hosting large numbers of persons. And this is where we actually target, and I think we've seen significant benefit since we started in 2005 with our early warning system. Initially, there was significant hesitancy as it related to that whether Barbados was at risk to a potential tsunami. I think we have moved on with the support of our national agencies, DEM, CZMU, to see where many of our stakeholders in tourism, education, various industries are actually building in systems, contingency plans, institutional wide, their evacuation plans and so on to really target, those were tested as part of our third wave as well. And we are pleased at UNESCO IOC to partner with the government of Barbados to actually introduce a new community. We have been funded through the Norwegian Development Corporation, or NORAD, and some support through UNESCO IOC as well, to actually build out the early warning system for tsunamis as it relates to the Tsunami Ready program in a new community. And there are obviously ongoing efforts as well, wider through our national counterparts as well as other partners. As we initiate this process, we will be collaborating with the Caribbean Disaster Emergency Management Agency, the International Tsunami Information Center out of the US, their Caribbean office, which is based in Puerto Rico, as well as the Seismic Research Center of University of the West Indies. So we assure the public that we do have systems in place, and we are looking as well to implement and enhance these systems as we move forward with the partnerships throughout the region and our member states, including Barbados.
You just mentioned one sector, tourism, and I see, recently even driving on the South Coast is another hotel going up. And of course, we have houses from God knows how long. Do you have a program with, say, town country planning, some requirements, building materials, how strong it should be, at least moving forward, the building capacity, to withstand a surge, X amount of force, things like that, as well as, let me add, you have people in the hotel, tourists, an evacuation plan because they're on the beach and they're having a vacation, perhaps a brochure inside of, not to panic them, but it could happen while they're on holiday, a kind of a what to do as well. Those are the things that we're looking at moving forward.
Right. Well, from my end, I will let Kerry speak to the evacuation plans. But from my end, all development applications that fall to the coastline, like I said before, the Coastal Zone Management Unit evaluates. Generally, what we try to do is to insist that you have a specified setback requirement away from the high water mark position, which would allow us to then be able to have a buffer between the actual water line and its potential impact on the coastline. So try to ensure that where practicable, certain coastal engineering structures that are going to be built are going to be able to withstand at least a Category 3, low Category 4 storm, hurricane wave event. Okay. The reality is that while people would like to design for tsunamis, you can't always design for tsunami. The cost would just be too prohibitive. So therefore, you have to design for a worst case event storm wave that could potentially impact you while you're on a coastline. And then on top of that as well, you should also be trying to incorporate earthquake resiliency into any design that you're building. Now, that is something that has also been put forward by other agencies in government within the last years or so to ensure that you're seeing more and more of that level of resiliency being incorporated as one can lead to the other. I think that's very important for us to always recommend and follow through on, and to ensure that those sort of guidelines are adhered.
Okay, and on the tourist end, informing our tourists in the hotels, what's the plan there? And staff.
Yes, we have a very, I would say, a pervasive educational program, and it is an ongoing activity where we include the entire population and the various sectors. Um, the the idea is to ensure that we have community and institutional preparedness across the board, because we do live in an island community. So the sector has benefited from our educational program. Just on the 10th of March, when we had the KERRY, one of the hotel plants actually looked to practice their evacuation procedures, and it not only included the staff but also persons who were the guests who were staying at the hotel. It is important that that information, we work with various hotels to ensure that they have that information available to them, and we also assist them with their evacuation procedures. So that assistance comes not only from the Department of Emergency Management, but from the other agencies, say for example, the Barbados Fire Service and what's not. So it really is an ongoing program, and we hope that persons will just get on board and try to seek out that information. We push a lot of the information out on our social media platforms. We go and we do preparedness talks. So over the years, we have had the tourism sector and other sectors and other agencies participate in not only the Caribbean exercise, but various exercises that will seek to validate the procedures that they have in place. And sometimes we would go and do checks and stuff to give them information in terms of how they can better prepare their facilities, better prepare their staff, and better prepare everyone really to respond in the event that a tsunami does occur.
I can tell you that I am very paranoid about tsunamis, truthfully. I drive and sometimes I just look at the water, or I'm on the beach having a drink, and then I'm like, if that ocean just starts to pull right back and I can see the seabed, the ad says, because there was an ad going out there, I think with Matt Fingal. So he's telling everybody to run. So in my mind, when I drive along the coast, and I'm just saying that, is this something you might do? The exit points. You're on the coast, you're driving, you're in a traffic jam. There's a tsunami warning. What do? Do you jump out the car? Do you leave the car? Do you run? So what we will do when we come back after the break is we just want to know one of them what to do. If I'm driving, do I get out the car? Do I try to find an exit in the car? But we will continue because we're just here, we take a break, but now we're saying continue, but that's fine. So I'm gonna ask you again, what to do? I'm driving in my car, there's a tsunami warning. Do I get out and run? Or do I try to drive and go up Rendezvous Hill if I'm on the South Coast? What do we do?
The messaging, we ask persons to move to higher ground, run to higher ground. Why it is preferred that persons walk or run, because in terms of the vehicles, you know how our roads are here in Barbados, and you can have the traffic jams. The idea is that you do not want persons to be sitting in their vehicles trying to get out of somewhere, and then the waves are coming towards you or whatever. Because that time you could have probably moved away from the area where the traffic jam is. So the preferred is for persons to just move to higher ground, walk, run, whatever, to a place of safety.
So when you're having a surge, okay, because as you said earlier, most people think of this huge one big wave covering an entire island, and that's not really what it is. It's a number of waves coming in, and there's a lot of force. So there's a lot of debris, and people don't necessarily drown. They get hit by objects, and maybe then they drown because they're unconscious. Different things can happen. So if you're in a building and hotel, obviously you would say, okay, you can't get out to run. probably should go up on the top floor because it's not the wave, the height, it's the surge. So you should probably get to higher ground right there if you can't run inland. Is that something that it's recommended? There's another one here. Is there, if there's a tsunami, will I be safe in parishes like St. George and St. Thomas? Well, whoever that is my best friend, because I always said if I have to build a house today, I build in a house. I go in the middle. Can a tsunami impact us as far inland as those two parishes? That's basically the question.
To the best of my understanding, no, it cannot.
Okay.
No, it cannot.
All right. So all of the surges, and it's really more the storm surge, which actually still occurs during a hurricane.
Yeah.
It's
Yes,
just
it does.
stronger. And so the fact that
Yeah.
the ocean bed, when they talk about it, pulls right back, you can see the bed of the ocean, and then it just pushes. It's the force. It can move cars, it can move
Yeah.
houses, it can move anything. We've seen the videos, of course, people trying to climb up trees, etc. Is it true that when the water comes back, it pulls everything back into the ocean with it? It does. I mean, obviously,
Yes, it does.
It does. Okay. Well.
Yeah, so that you have to remember, you still have the same sort of wave action that's taking place, right? So you will have a situation where you will have the drawdown, which is where the water sort of like recedes as the wave starts to build, and then as it starts to come onshore and is increasing velocity coming across the seabed and then onto the shoreline, you have that pervasiveness as it's happening, and then there will be a slowing down of the wave when you will get the backwash again taking place. So everything that has been made mobile, which is all the floating debris, as you said, buildings, boats, cars, trucks, vans, everything that has now been suspended in the water, furniture, you name it, whatever it is, once it can float, it will then become a projectile in water. That will then move back again as the wave then surges up and then moves forward again, right? So you have that progressive penetration inland. The force of the water will then contact on buildings. The sheer weight of water will push down buildings. It will swamp houses. You know, you've seen the images where the water level can go over the height of a two-story building, right, when it's starting to run. So it's those sort of things that people understand the speed at which this sort of stuff can occur and the depth of water that you're experiencing. And remember, it's constantly moving and swashing. So at some point in time then, when all of that debris is still floating and it moves back out into the ocean, you will then have a lot of debris that will then be left to settle out in locations, as well as the placement of new debris inland in areas where you wouldn't have thought they could have reached. So as we saw in Japan, you can have tankers and ships push, 4 miles inland, okay? Which once there, you got to really and truly cut them up to get them out, because you cannot pull a ship that large back out to sea. So they either stay there permanently or they're cut up and then for removal, But that's the reality of the power of the water. Okay, that's the power of the water.
Well, I mean, I am a little concerned. Since the tsunami in, I believe, Southeast Asia, it was, in 2001 or 2, I have had about 20 tsunami dreams. I do not understand them, and I cannot swim. Let me declare this. I would like to learn to swim. Not that that helps in a tsunami, because you just need to run. A question here about Kikum Jenny. Would you have time with Kikum Jenny? Would you be able to see the activity first before, and then you would know if something is going to happen? Is it still a threat?
In terms of Kikum Jenny, the Seismic Research Center in Trinidad is always monitoring Kikum Jenny. They always pay a lot of attention to the rate at which the volcanic dome is rising, and if it does a partial collapse and then starts to build again, etc. So there have been instances where, like in early 2000, it had gone to, I think, an orange alert at one point in time when it had become very, very active, and then it died down. So there is a process for monitoring Kikum Jenny. The biggest issue, obviously, with Kikum Jenny would be the extent to which an eruption could occur and the extent to which the displacement of the sea floor could take place to then cause the water to move in which direction the failure has occurred. Okay, so if it fails on the side facing onto Barbados, then there is the potential for a tsunami to be generated. Depending on the size of the failure would depend upon the height of wave to be generated to come off to the island. And then, as always, based on what was said earlier, you can have as little as 15 minutes to maybe an hour in terms of notification, so you have to be alert. This is why, even as we're now rolling into the hurricane season, it is essential for every Barbadian to install the CAP protocol onto their cell phone, right? This will inform you, especially during hurricane season, about tropical storms, depressions, waves, potential storm wave activity. It also gives you information during the year when you have to deal with things such as flood alerts, etc. And you would then know and recognize areas of the island that are under a flood watch, etc. It is very timely, and I think it's something that also hotels should be ensuring that their guests also try to install when they come. So, because, when you're on the beach, you always got your phone with you. So you'll be hearing any alert that would be coming towards you, unless, of course, you're in the water. But if you're at the beach, your phone is going to be with you, and you will hear the alerts coming out. So it is something that has to be really and truly pushed now for every Barbadian to install along.
It would be good when you purchase a cell phone, perhaps the providers could sort of load it on for you when you purchase it, at least if you purchase it from the two main cell phone providers, so we can ensure that they have
even that,
that on them. We have one last question, then we're going to wrap up. We're asking now about the underwater earthquakes. Where else in the world should we be aware if we hear of an underwater earthquake, where we in Barbados then should be concerned in the region, the Caribbean?
Thanks, Joanne. I guess that would be my question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dr.
In other words, if something happens in Australia, Belize, somewhere, when should we be concerned?
Dr. Brewster is the scientist, and I will devolve to him very shortly. So I would just say that, just to reiterate what we said earlier, that essentially we can be impacted by occurrences within our region, outside of our region, and we encourage the population, obviously, to remain vigilant, to be on guard. I was a little troubled when you said you've had about 20 tsunami dreams since 2004.
No, I'm so serious. And I'm running and I'm waking up and I'm about to get hit by a wave. And that's all gone. I'm running for the kids. I never experienced what actually happened. I can just see the water and then I wake up. And I'm not exaggerating, there were about 20. Don't know why.
And I'm sure you're not the only person, Joanne, but again, we really want to, given that we do live in such a situation where we can be threatened, so really we want to assure the public that it doesn't mean that you do not need to enjoy your drink. It doesn't mean you don't need to go to the beach. There are people who spend thousands of dollars to come to Barbados and the region to enjoy our beautiful sunshine and our temperatures. So I would encourage the public to continue doing that, but of course to be vigilant and to be aware. There are many tools, as we said. We practice our community early warning, so therefore we are trying, as part of this program as well, to encourage and educate persons. Also, we spoke of the tools, CAP and other tools, and to be very aware. As I said, rest assured, there is also an international system operating where we do exchange information, data, and we did have that discussion earlier as well. Through the Tsunami Ready program, I would just want to reiterate a bit that this is where we actually are able to take it from the very international, regional, right down to the community level. And the initiative we spoke of earlier, we are actually looking to implement the program in the community of Old Town in Barbados. The national agencies would have done some work in Old Town a few years ago, and we are looking to fully flesh out that community to become tsunami ready over the next few months to a year. And we look forward to supporting our member state Barbados and also the community stakeholders with respect to Hold Town to bring it to fruition and to enhance and build that capacity. As we call it in the UN decade, the safe ocean. And we need to start visualizing, rather than having those kind of dreams, visualizing that safe ocean where we can enjoy, recreate, and of course, still have a measure of safety and look out as we go. The program internationally, as I said, helps us as well because we think of building here and should a tsunami impact as well as here in Barbados. But when we travel, a tsunami can also impact us elsewhere. And through this international system where we have very standardized ways of approaching or warning, approaching our signage or evacuation and so on, it means that whatever we teach you here in Barbados as well generally will be applicable elsewhere where you go as well. And we want to also engender that measure of safety as we travel and as we live here and other places as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Final words, KERRY, HINDS, 30 seconds. 30 seconds. We're now here. We have to wrap up. I'm so sorry. We are actually out of time. But we want to thank you so much for coming. KERRY HINDS, Director, Department of Emergency Management, Dr. Leo Brewster, Director, Coastal Zone Management Unit, and ALISON BROME, Program Officer for Coastal Hazards, Caribbean Tsunami Information Center. Thank you so much for coming and sharing that information with us. Thank you.
Thanks,
We'll be
Mark.
back.
Thank
We'll
you.
be back after the break. Thank you. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. It is World Down Syndrome Day, and we're all celebrating, myself included, my daughter Sky, and a lot of people in Barbados right now rocking their socks from right across the world. And we're going to show you some pictures of some individuals who decided to share their pictures with us. Peter Aline, for one, she actually has a nice pair that she only wears every World Down Syndrome Day. She puts them up and she wears them again. They're actually very cute. I picked up a pair not as fancy, but I live this every day with my daughter Sky, and I want to share some videos of some children with Down syndrome as we're celebrating World Down Syndrome Day. And as soon as the producer lines them up, we will have those videos there. Now, just to give you a quick overview, because the doctor will be here, she's here actually, Dr. Medford. As a parent with my daughter, of course, 22 years ago, she was born. It was difficult when you heard the news, but truthfully, as you get to know your child and you get more information, it becomes easier some days. And note, I said some days because I'm not going to say it's a walk in the park, but like any child, whether it's challenge or not, there's always. I'm going to have the audio. Hopefully we can pull that up because that's the fun part of this video. She's singing a Christian song. This is my daughter Sky.
Oh yes, Lord. To me. And my heart is so overwhelmed today. Lord, somebody get a t-shirt and wave it. Somebody wave it. Somebody get on me.
Well, I laugh every time I see that. That's my daughter Sky, loving Christian music, and I don't go to church, but she does. And unfortunately, for the last 2 years, because of COVID, she was unable to, but she continued to sing out to God and pray every day. And I'm so proud of her. We have pictures and videos of other children, if we can put them up right now. I believe his name is, we have his name, I'm sure the producer has his name, but isn't he a sweetie? And his mother and his parents are very proud. He's just over a year old, and he has Down syndrome too as well. And they sent in some videos for us to share with you. Unfortunately, I don't have all of the names. And I think we have another one here coming up too as well. Another little girl. Oh, here's Ashton. Ashton's mom is the president of the Down Syndrome Association. Ashton is quite a handful, and I'm hoping that, you know, I always tell his mother, you know, that's my son-in-law. So Ashton is quite a sweetheart. And this other cutie rocking her socks. You go, girl. Rocking her socks today. And I believe we have one more with the little girl. I think she's 5 years old. And I'm sorry I didn't get all of the names, or we couldn't share them with you. But we are celebrating with all persons with Down syndrome today, their families, their friends, and we want to be able to let you know about Down syndrome, that it's not a death sentence, and give you the information so you can be better parents, better friends, better family members. So before we, oh, there she is. Oh my goodness, little princess looking into the mirror. Hopefully she will look back, I believe. There you go. Look back at us, sweetheart. Oh, she is so adorable. Very, very pretty. Now, joining us today is Dr. Medford. We will discuss Down syndrome and some of the health. Dr. Gail Medford, we will be discussing some of the health challenges. And yes, there are health challenges. Sometimes it's heart and other things. And we will speak to her and get that information so that you would know what you need to do when you get the good news, because people think it's bad news. Your child is here on this earth. Yes, he or she may have Down syndrome, but there are steps that you can take in order to improve the quality of his or her life. Good morning, Dr. Medford. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah. Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. We just wanted an overview of Down syndrome, what is Down syndrome, and some of the challenges that you would have seen in your medical practice that parents would come to get their health checks and they have their concerns. What are some of the common health challenges, and what is Down syndrome?
Okay. Down syndrome is a genetic disorder. It's one of the most common ones. And the children with this disorder could have an extra chromosome, which is genetic material, chromosome 21. And because of the presence of this, it causes certain manifestations. I think you all would have seen in the videos that they look very similar because it causes certain physical features. So starting from the head, they tend to have a small head. They tend to have flattening of the back of the head. They can have upslanting of the eyes and flattening of the face. And the mouth tends to be small. The back of the oral cavity, the size of the mouth is small. They tend to have short necks and overall be short stature. They're short people. Have a tendency to be a little on the heavy side. And some of them have holes in the heart, congenital heart disease. And they may have hernias, umbilical at the navel, umbilical hernias, abnormalities of their hips. They tend to be floppy, and so their tone is down. So you might find that they seem to be able to lie, what we call it, with a frog leg position. Their hips can when they're lying down can much wider than you or I. Lying, and characteristically, some of a particular crease in the palm of their hand, the simian crease, shows the space between the toe. All those features may not be present in every, but find that because of the presence of this extra chromosome, each of the children have similar features. Okay, you wanted to know what kind of problems that we see. Well, when the children are born, you see problems from birth throughout life. Okay, when they're born, the person examine them, the doctor examine them, may hear what we call a heart murmur, so they have a hole in the heart, and depending on how bad that condition is, it may affect their ability. They might stop and stop because they can't feed well. They tend to be floppy. They may or may not be jaundiced. They have a tendency to have an underactive thyroid, and it can cause them to have prolonged jaundice in the neonatal period. So then going on in life, you might find that they have problems in terms of breathing. The nose tends to sound a little what we call snuffly. Some may even have obstructive sleep apnea, where they stop breathing when they're sleeping, or they're very congested. And then again, later on, you might be able to pick up abnormalities in their neck, the bones in the neck. And even later on, things like thyroid problems, blood disorders like leukemia, and they tend to, as I said, be chubby, be overweight. And very later, in the teenage times, they may also have an ear bumps in the armpits, between the legs, on the bottom. And very much later on in life, a tendency to Alzheimer's disease. So there are different problems may show up throughout their lifespan, but he doesn't get everything. Yes, that's enough.
Okay, okay, I missed that last part, but at what
later
age?
On that they might.
No, I'm sorry, it was just frozen a little bit. I didn't hear that last part, but that's okay.
The last part, I was saying that.
Okay, so let's just say the baby, what's probably the most important part of getting the health checks done? Is it the heart? Is it the heart that you should check for first? Is it, because I mean, some of these problems would happen eventually, but there's some congenital, the ones with the heart, obviously it's something they're born with. Not all of them, but some.
No, but the heart it is important to have that diagnosed. And usually when the doctors examine them at birth, they may pick it up, if not exactly at birth, certainly during the visits, the visits for their immunizations. Doctors usually would listen and examine the child again to hear any heart murmurs, so that could be picked up at an early stage. Yes.
And these problems are normally rectified around what age? What is the recommended age to get the heart fixed? If surgery is required.
It depends on what's the problem. It depends on what the problem is. If they have a heart murmur, they should be referred to the cardiologist. And then in the cardiologist would determine based on what the problem is, whether they need any surgery at all or if it's something that just needs to be monitored. But they all should be referred to the cardiologist.
Okay, some persons are asking if there is a cure. It's not a disease, but they're asking if there is a cure for Down syndrome. In other words, once you have it, is there any research that shows that there's something that can be done to change the what you see?
Not as far as I know. I don't know. It's not that kind of condition. As I said, it's due to abnormal genes, and so there's nothing that will cure the condition. What you try to do is to any right course of development.
Okay, so the heart, you mentioned things like leukemia, blood disorders. One of the things I recognize that they do have in common is that most of them wear glasses at an earlier age.
Yes.
Why is that?
Okay, yeah, I forgot that part. Yeah, a lot of them have sighted. So, and that would pick up some of cataract when they're born. When they are examined and being followed up by their doctors, they should get their eyes checked. That's early on, yes. That's one of the things. They should be referred for an eye check.
And what about their weight? Because they do have a tendency to be a little bit more on the weighty side. Is that something that concerns you as a doctor? Is that something that can change?
Because they are at risk, like everybody else, of the chronic diseases, whether it be in teens or later in life. So we should be careful. I mean, breast is best. We try to breastfeed. If the mom could breastfeed us at least the first 6 months or more of life. Be careful when they introduce foods and the bottle. You try not to overfeed because they have a tendency to gain weight, and certainly you would not want to become overweight and then risk of diseases later on.
What do you find with parents as a doctor when they bring their children in? What kind of questions do they ask? Do they sort of more depressed? Because I know some parents, unless you try your best to talk them through the whole thing, especially when children now come into the world, they're confused. But what do you generally get from parents as a sense of they're lost, they're depressed? Do they get help from the doctors in terms of maybe putting them in a direction with maybe a group or anything like that? What do you see with the parents?
Well, okay, I work at the Children's Development Center, and I tend to see them when they're a little older. I'm not sure. I haven't had the issues I would tend to find. But, parents would be concerned what happened to the children as they get older. If the family support to look after them, that kind of, and they would be concerned about the different conditions that may arise. For example, we know one of the ways to notice that they have thyroid disorder is that they might be rapidly weight. So the weight gain is a struggle, and that might point you to the thyroid. The other thing is they all tend to have intellectual disability. So then schooling and challenges with schooling sometimes come up, and trying to get them to be as independent as possible, to do what they can do for themselves. It's like a spectrum. Everybody doesn't have intellectual abilities. So you find that there's some that will be able to handle themselves better than others. Another concern is always that at the time of puberty and starting periods, because some are not able to manage that on their own, and there are others very So, it's not, again, it's tailored to the child, everybody being the same.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, more questions for Dr. Medford and with persons with Down syndrome, and we're going to talk about intimacy when we come back after the break. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. We are celebrating Down syndrome. It's World Down Syndrome Day. And to discuss some of the concerns, health challenges, is Dr. Gail Medford with us. Before the break, we said we will touch a little bit on sexuality in terms of their adolescence. The mothers and fathers may have some questions as to how do you manage that. And do you have a discussion, and what type of discussion can you have with your child if they are intellectually challenged? And I guess it would be based on the level of how of capacity, because it would vary. Should a mother ask their child with Down syndrome these types of questions that you would ask your quote-unquote normal children in terms of their sexuality and their thoughts and their feelings?
You should. It depends on, but it depends on entirely on the child and what is their socialization, how they are in the family unit, and so on. I mean, a lot of parents are protective, and the children are not out there on their own, so they would have a fairly good idea on with them. But I guess you would have to introduce to them, simple as you can way, some information on sexuality. I can't tell you it will be an easy thing to discuss. You have to try it in a simple way to put it. But,
it's a little, okay, it's not the type, well, for me as a mother, trust me, it's a difficult conversation because...
Yeah, well, when you're going on with, in the course of the child and parent be followed up by their family doctor, and I guess you could have a joint discussion with the family doctor and the parent if you find it extremely difficult, but it's
how often
something that I guess.
So when they reach adolescent stage, how often, when you say things like leukemia, it's higher in persons with Down syndrome getting leukemia, how regular should they get health checks for all of these things that you just laid out? Because it was a lot.
Okay. Well, usually I do at least an annual check. And it all depends on what's happening with the child. Should they develop symptoms, for example, if the moms find that there's bruising and repeated infections, and that might suggest that something's going on with their blood, so then they would sooner get a check, even if we say like annual visits. If there are symptoms that occur along the way, then the parents should check with their doctors. Don't wait and say, well, okay, it's in a year's time. But if you notice anything different, then just confirm. You could call your doctor, ask a question, and get it checked out. If they...
No, go ahead.
No, I said if they have a problem, like, if they are on medication, then you may need to see them more often. So, for example, if they have a thyroid problem, then you might need to see them every 4 months to check on that. But it's again, it's an individual approach. It's not one hat fits all.
How early is early with the Alzheimer's? As early as what, in your 30s, 20s?
40s. Well, they say usually around 40s. What I would say is parents know their children very well. And when they notice changes, for example, I had, wasn't a parent, was a sister who was looking after a young lady. She was in her 40s. And she mentioned to me that she noticed that she seemed to be a little bit more withdrawn and not seeming to be able to do things that she could previously do. Like she would help at home, fold clothes, and it's like she couldn't remember to do those things. So there are for diagnosis of dementia, there are specific tests that can be done, but in terms of the individual who has Down syndrome, it's hard to apply those tests. So you have to kind of go by what was their norm and any changes that you notice from their norm, and then take them to the doctor to get that checked out.
Mm-hmm. Why do they have dry mouth more so and dry lips more so than the average person? That's something I've noticed. Is it because the breathing, because of the mouth is more open?
I think part of it is that they have a small nose and, as I said, the small oral cavity, and so some of them are congested and mouth breathe. Their skin also tends to be a bit dry, yeah, I guess it might be just because of that, to show that they're well hydrated, and if you need to use lip balm and that kind of thing.
As we know, there are about 5 cases on average, from what I understand, in Barbados a year. In your practice, do you see more boys or girls with Down syndrome? Is it balanced?
I have seen mainly girls. There are a couple boys that have come across, but I have seen mainly girls.
Okay, so with the boys that you see, is it true that they're normally sterile? And if they're born with Down syndrome, obviously they're born with Down syndrome, but when they come to you as an adolescent, is it true that the males are sterile? I read that, but I mean, I have a girl child, I don't have a boy. Is that true?
Yeah, well, I have seen written, I haven't got any, let me see. In the children that I have looked after so far, the oldest boy is probably in teens. I have not seen any older ones. In terms of whether they're sterile or not, when they're born, you have to make sure that their testicles are down, that they're extended when you examine them. But some of them is a low percentage, albeit, but some of them can father children. I think I read somewhere about 1% or something like that. A small percent still can. So, again, it's not everybody, and you may have a few that are not sterile. Yes, by and large, they go through puberty like all boys do. And they do say that after puberty, the testicle volume can decrease, but and their sperm may not be like normal sperm. But again, you can't, you have to take it on an individual basis. I can't say yes, most of them will be, but you will find that there's some who are not.
So, okay, so I want to get back to the care of the heart. When mommy recognizes that the child has a heart defect, and the steps that they normally take. and the steps that they normally take after they get heart surgery, because I want to know if they do get the heart surgery here, and then the care, if it's only by the cardiologist or even persons like yourself. But when we come back, we will discuss that because we have to take a break right now. We'll be back. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. It's World Down Syndrome Day, and we are talking with Dr. Gail Medford on some of the health challenges that she would see in her practice when children are in their adolescent stage, mainly come to her. And before the break, we were talking about heart defects. Now, I know for a fact, because my daughter had a heart defect. I mean, I guess you still have it because it's never 100%. It is repaired, and a good repair, but you know, you still have the patches on. When that happens and the parents need the surgery in Barbados, what happens? Do we have, because 22 years ago, no, we did not. Had to send the child overseas, etc., etc. What is the situation here now as far as the heart is concerned? If you do know, and you can share that with us, do we actually perform pediatric cardiac surgery here for persons with Down syndrome?
I don't work in the hospital, and for some, it depends on what is the problem. For some things, yes, they can be done in Barbados, but some children still need to be referred overseas. So it's not everything that would be done here.
Okay, but do you actually still see patients with cardiac issues, or most of them are repaired regardless of where? If it's here or overseas, or do you have a tendency to see teenage children with still having a cardiac issue?
Okay, well, some of them the ones like that I might come across are ones who didn't have who didn't have anything major, or who didn't have the facility when it was when they were younger. But most of the children, for the cardiac issues, they are followed up at the hospital in cardiology clinic. So I wouldn't say I per se would be doing their cardiac follow-up. They would be seen. You ask about it and try to make sure they keep their the parents keep their appointments, and make sure that the children do attend the clinic visits. And if in between they have any questions or any acute problem and they come to me, then I can refer them to the cardiologist at the hospital. But like I said, I don't work at the hospital, and I do not, as a routine, follow up specifically their cardiac problems, but the pediatric cardiologist at the hospital does.
What about the intestines? You see a lot of that in terms of the intestines not functioning or gastrointestinal problems. Is that common as well?
Okay, well, I don't see a lot. I wouldn't tell you I see a lot. Certainly, that's something that I forgot to mention is not an uncommon occurrence in a child who has Down syndrome. In terms of like, okay, can start from the time they're newborns. They might start with vomiting, and then when investigated, you can find that there are blocks. And even before newborn, I should say, in the prenatal ultrasound, when the mom is pregnant, there's with a good ultrasound, one may be able to pick up that there may be a problem like what we call duodenal atresia, where there's a block in the duodenum, which is the part of the bowel just outside the stomach. And so anticipate that when the child is born, that might be an issue which would need surgical correction. And then after birth, children with vomiting, children may have problems with vomiting because there is a block in the stomach, in the duodenum. The anus can sometimes be not formed. It might be a block there, so that would have to be fashioned. In general, the bowel tends to be working slow, so they have a tendency to constipation. And they can have a connection between the esophagus, the swallow pipe, and the trachea, so that when they're feeding, they might turn blue because fluid is going into the lungs when they're feeding. So yes, they can have quite a few different gastrointestinal problems. And again, everybody doesn't have it. The couple that I have seen, the older ones that I've seen a couple who had surgery when they were small for the block in the duodenum, duodenal atresia. Some have reflux, gastroesophageal reflux symptoms. But again, I really can't say that I've seen many in the years that have been around who had those problems.
Okay.
But it's something to bear in mind. It's something to bear in mind that can happen. Yes, to be aware.
So in closing, what advice would you want to give parents, newborns, adolescents, how soon they should come to see a doctor once it is established your child is presenting features of a person with Down syndrome? Do they do health checks right away?
Well, I would say that if there is the suspicion, and you get the suspicion from the features that the child has, and as I said, if they're floppy and so on, they should be seeing their doctor on a regular basis. The initial follow-up, like when they're going to get their immunizations, which is at 2, 4, 6 months, in those initial days, then it would be good to when they see their doctor, the doctor will re-examine and check on what's happening with them. If there are particular problems that are picked up, then they might need to come 3 to 4 months. It depends on what the problem is. Beyond that, then I would say that times like, okay, in growing up, we need to at least have annual checks. You need to monitor their weights. If some of the children attend Special Olympics overseas, so they would need certain evaluations coming up to teenage for Special Olympics. They check on their necks and so on, do special x-ray and make sure that their able to manage whatever sport they're going, because if they have a heart problem, and link with a cardiologist. It's usually not only the doctor follow-up, it's usually a group like the physiotherapists have an input, the eye doctors, the speech therapists, the occupational therapists, who can all give advice to the moms as to how to manage with the child, because you might find it take a little while before they start walking. The physios would help with that, and ways to encourage bowel movement of the bowel, so they help with the constipation. At the center, it's a multidisciplinary approach, and each of the therapists give their input to assist depending on what issue presents itself. And so I would say that they should make sure they follow the children up at least annually. For the older ones, might need to be twice a year. Get their bloods done. I will certainly at the center do them. If they're their private doctors, you know, to monitor their blood counts and for the thyroid, keep a track of the weight, try to not overfeed. Love them, are very children, and I mean, they're very friendly, they're very loving, you know.
Yes.
Treat them like any child, you know, you try to encourage them in whatever they do. You take them into the family. They may take longer to learn things, but that doesn't mean that they can't. They can. They can. And I find, you know, it all depends on what your family. Don't be daunted. I guess if the parents, then they could also confer with the therapist, with their private doctor, a specific area that is causing them concern. But these children, they I mean, I'm amazed. I mean, some of them give me chat.
No, that's all right. Well, I want to thank you so much, Dr. Gil Medford, because we could, of course, my favorite topic is this, because my daughter does have Down syndrome, but I want to thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for sharing that information. Thank you.
Thank you, too.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. I first want to thank Dr. Bamji for submitting his socks. There it is, Dr. Bamji's rocking his blue socks. And his staff at Dr. Bamji's office showing respect to World Down Syndrome Day. There they are. Thank you, girls. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Tina, and all the others. Thank you, Shakila, for sharing that with us. And I also want to share a quick WhatsApp with you that just came in. It says here, when we get it up on the screen, good show today, Joyanne, lots of good information. My question to you is, would you agree that our progressive government will always be hindered by an old, antiquated Senate? Yes, after that move that we saw when the Senate unfortunately did not agree, or we had information that they would not approve young Kofdawala at 18, and they figured that the age should be, he should wait. I was sad too. I really, really, really felt that he should have a space, if not him per se, but a person in his age group. And it's backward. It was a backward move for them not to do it. And I said it. It was a backward move. If you want us to push forward and you want the ideas of the young people together with the old people and to move this country forward, moves like that will not help. And I think as we try to move forward, we do have to get rid of some of the old ways of doing things, and we have to try new things. And I share with Prime Minister Motley when she felt bad. I did too, because we were all very excited, and I thought that it was a good move. And unfortunately, some members in the Senate did not think that. And I'm hoping that maybe Barbadians can say, look, that's not good enough. Maybe we could cry out a little bit more. Perhaps they may have a change of heart. I don't know. But for me, if you can vote at 18, you can do a lot of things at 18. I don't see what the problem is. And remember, I said, I don't think it's about the age. If you're 18 and you're mature, that you think like a 30-year-old, then the age should not matter. Well, once it is 18 and up. But I really think that he should have been given the opportunity, because even though he's 18 years old, he's well ahead of his time. And he would have been an asset to us all and representing the young people in the Senate. And I do know a lot of young people that are a little bit disappointed about that, especially the young people who we saw a couple of weeks ago when we had young Kofdawala here with Thierry Gittins and other young people that came on the show. They were upset too. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Rock your socks. If you don't have them, get home or do something. You wrap a piece of cloth around your ankles and rock something in order to show respect to World Down Syndrome Day. My name is Joyanne Haigh. Hopefully we'll be back on Friday. We're not 100% sure, and because of BSAP and sports, but we will certainly let you know with a promo during the week. Until then, God bless, stay safe. I'll see you soon. Bye.